Defensively for the Komets, we mentioned Tozolino,
monsters.
6'5". I mean, you could tell on media day when they just called out names and they stood up and they're like, "This is a defenseman." They have gotten bigger.
Yeah.
Nick Pakaluk, you're talking 6'5". Simone Denny Pepin, 6'7".
Oh, look at Jeremy Gates too. I mean, he looks a lot bigger than last year. I wrote that if this year's defense stood in front of last year's defense, you wouldn't see anybody from last year's defense. They'd be behind him. They'd be invisible. That's how big these guys are. And they can all skate, too. That's what's really impressive about it, is they can all handle the puck and move. And that's what's really shown up in the scrimmages.
Another thing I imagine that's shown up in the scrimmages is depth at goaltender. Because last year, because of injuries, last year was a weird year, especially for goalies, because of the lockout, because of the way things moved around. Muse, expectations high. Reichert, expectations high. He's a Salina kid. He grew up 50 minutes from here playing here in Fort Wayne. What have you seen from the goaltending positions, and who are some of the guys? Strang obviously has some talent as well.
Strang's been amazing.
Yeah, what do you see
Strang
there?
has been the best guy so far in the scrimmages. I mean, he's the biggest guy, and he plays big too. But he's been outstanding. And I've been really happy for Larkin Salfrank. He's gotten to play in every scrimmage, and he's held his own right with those guys. Now, Larkin's going to go to Dayton in the Federal League for a tryout, which is great for him because he's finally going to find out, can I really do this or not, and is it worth taking a shot at, which I think this week he's proven that it is. And I really hope for Larkin that he gets a real solid chance there because I think he'll do well. But Strang has looked really good, and he'll put the pressure on Reichard and Muse. Now, I think Reichard and Muse is who they'll go with. Mm-hmm. But it'd be nice to have Strang on the phone right there.
Well, one of the things in talking to Reichard and Muse early in the week is just asking them about their goaltending philosophies. They're not real risk takers.
No.
Very fundamentally sound. And I think maybe that'll mold well with this defense.
I don't
think
think
they take a lot of risk.
Well, exactly. I don't think they have to. They're not Charlie. Charlie always he'd gamble. And then he might get out of position sometimes and have to come up with something spectacular. So far, I've noticed these guys, they don't do the spectacular because they don't have to. They're very good at controlling their rebounds. They have no problem, we'll just shut it down, make a save, hold it. They don't give up. They don't give up chances. They're very good positionally. They're very technique oriented.
All right. And as far as the preseason goes, I mean, it's come on really quick. You're talking about camp beginning Sunday, first game tonight, Wednesday at Wheeling, and then another scrimmage Friday, Kalamazoo, and then back here at the Coliseum for the final preseason contest on Saturday. What are they trying to get out of this? Because they're obviously, like you said, they have so many forwards that could make an ECHL
I think
roster.
That's the thing. I think that's exactly it, Glenn. They are trying to weed out some of the forwards. And you can't tell the difference so far in the training camp right now. Obviously there's 3 or 4 obvious guys are going to Dayton or Pensacola or Bloomington. But other than that, there's probably 14, 15 guys who could legitimately make this team. They don't have room for all them. At the most, they have room for 12. And that's if nobody gets hurt and goes on IR. Like I said, 3 to 5 guys are going to play in this league somewhere else because they are that good. You could very easily see a player like, and this is just an example, not that he's the guy, okay, because he's played well. You could see a Chris Auger. If you didn't know what he could do, he could be on the bubble. But what he can do, and Chris is a great defensive player too, and he's coming back from the knee injury. But, if you didn't know, there's 3 or 4 guys like that who are that close. There's there's the top 2 lines, top 6 players. There's probably 10 guys competing for those slots. There's probably 6 guys competing for the 3rd line spot, and they're all just as good, and they're all that close. I don't know how Gary Graham's going to make these decisions. I really don't. I told him that yesterday, and he goes, "That's why we got exhibition games." It's because it's that close. That's how competitive the scrimmages have been, and how close everybody is, and nobody's letting up at all.
One of the big decisions, I think, of the offseason that I think fans were wondering about how it was going to play out is the affiliation situation. Last year, as I mentioned, with the holdout, things were a little bit different than they are in a normal year as far as movement goes up. And it didn't work to the cohesiveness of the Komets. Thing is for sure.
That's the understatement of the year.
But they don't have an affiliation with Norfolk. They don't have one with the Ducks like they did last year. They're going into this season, and they always say that they're independent to a degree, but they're fully independent this year.
You know what they have? They aren't, though.
Yeah.
They have an affiliation, but it's with something more powerful than the Ducks or the American Hockey League team. They got an affiliation with the agents. Mm-hmm. Why do you think Tristan King is here? Why do you think Paul McIlvaine is here? They're both in the last years of their contracts. They didn't want to get buried somewhere. They wanted to pick. Mm-hmm. They picked Fort Wayne, and it went through the agents. They got the same agents as Rob Quiet and a couple other guys. I mean, these guys are here because they want to be here, and they worked it through their agents. Gary Graham, he basically pulled a fast one. Instead of dealing with the AHL team, he went around it to the agents, and the agents are working with him because he's developed those relationships with them. It's very interesting to see. It's what the Komets used to do when they got guys like Bob Asenza and Pat Ellenuk and some of those guys who were in the last year of their NHL deals, and they didn't want to go get stuck in the AHL in the basement somewhere. They wanted to go somewhere where they could put up numbers and make themselves more attractive. Because if you go to the AHL team and you're in the last year of contract, well, you think you're going to get the first line minutes? No, you're not. They're going to play the guy who's under contract and still developing.
Right, young
here they can come here and they can play. It's fascinating to see how he did that.
How different of an approach is that than what we saw last year heading into their first season of the season?
Oh, well, there was no doubt. There were guys that were getting buried here. Luash, Caputi, some of those guys that were in the last year of their contracts. I mean, it was obvious Norfolk and Anaheim didn't want them back. They're playing in Europe now. I mean, they were just sent here to be buried, and it didn't work out. They tore apart the locker room. This year, these guys actually want to be here. There's a huge difference that way, and you can see it when you see the way these guys are playing in the scrimmages. I mean, McIlvaine has been dominating. I mean, he's just so fast. There's nobody that can handle him on the defense. And it's not like it's bad defense either.
Right.
You know?
In your estimation, who's going to be a guy that, 6 months from now, we're going to say, man, I didn't see that coming, or I didn't know that much about him, but at the end of the day, he really made this Komets team better? There's
3 or 4 guys like that. Matthew Lark has been a huge pest during the scrimmages. He's just been great. I mean, he's the guy. He'll go get the puck, give it to a forward. The forward loses it. He'll go get it again, attract all the defense, whip it out to the defenseman for a shot on goal, and then he'll cut to the net to try to deflect the shot. I mean, you just can't slow the guy down. Kyle Boschek, the same thing. There's 3 or 4 guys like that. Kaylee Schrock's been doing that. Kaylee I think he leads the team in shots on goal during the scrimmages. He's got his quick release back. You can tell his hands not bother him anymore. And he's just as fast as everybody else. That's what I mean. There's going to be some really hard decisions to make on who plays on that third line. Jake Hausworth's another one. I mean, there are just some really good players there that they can all create havoc. Matt Furman, there's just, how do you pick a third line out of the 5 of those guys, and that's what you got to do, essentially.
How much are you looking forward to this season? Because it's a whole different mentality leading in. At least that's what I feel, just being around.
I like the way Gary's handling it. He's like, you know what these guys think about last year? They don't think about last year. It's like we get to write our own story in this locker room. And that's how he's preaching it, and they're all buying in. It's like, that's another reason why there aren't that many guys back. There is the last time the Komets were this and this and this, that doesn't apply. It's a total clean slate. Now, I asked a couple of the guys, can a team like that pull together enough to win a championship or challenge for a championship? And they all said it just depends on how many people we lose. And even if they do lose guys, I don't think they're going to be up for very long, because you're going to get the AHL general manager getting a call from the NHL general manager saying, hey, my guys are under contract. When are you going to play them? Get rid of these guys who aren't in our future. Yeah. So I think guys will be coming back quick.
All right. Final question. What are you most looking forward to?
Oh, man, there's so much. I'm really looking forward to seeing if they can maintain the pace that they've had in the scrimmages. If they can maintain the pace and the constant attack mode that they've had in the scrimmages, the Coliseum's going to get loud again. And that'll be nice to hear.
It will be, and it'll be a tough place to play again. They got that big ice, which is, they all talked about in the preseason, the speed of this team and how that was a detriment last year, but it's going to be a big benefit this year.
And he's already stressing, go to the net, go to the net. If you're not going to the net, I'll find somebody who will.
It is going to be a different type of season, I have a feeling, for Komet hockey fans, and it should be very exciting. Blake Sebring from the News Sentinel giving us great insight, as always, here on Wayne.com. But for Blake, I'm Glenn, and we'll see you later in the season.